"We're finally shutting down your embarrassing little business," my brother William announced to the bankruptcy courtroom, straightening his tie with the smug satisfaction of a man who believed he had already won. My parents nodded approvingly from the gallery, Mom dabbing fake tears while Dad's jaw remained set in righteous judgment. They looked at me like a problem to be solved, a mess to be cleaned up. They didn't realize they weren't the ones holding the gavel. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. As Judge Vance adjusted her glasses, scanning the documents my brother had just slammed onto her bench, the courtroom dissolved for a moment. The smell of floor wax and stale coffee faded, replaced by the scent of lilies and expensive perfume, the signature scent of the Sterling Hotel lobby. That lobby was William's kingdom. Growing up, everything in our family was about the surface. The gleam of the marble floors, the snap of a concierge's heels, the perfect knot in a silk tie. William was the heir apparent because he looked the part. He had the jawline, the charm, the ability to look a guest in the eye and lie about why their room wasn't ready without blinking. He was loud, he was visible, and to my parents, that meant he was valuable. I was the opposite. I was the ghost in the machine. While William was being groomed to shake hands and cut ribbons, I was banished to the server room in the basement. It was a freezing, windowless concrete box filled with the hum of cooling fans and the blink of router lights. That was my domain. When the Wi-Fi went down during a gala, I was the one they screamed for. I would crawl out from under the raised flooring, dust on my jeans, only to be told by my mother to use the service elevator so the guests wouldn't see me. To them, I wasn't a daughter. I was a utility, a mechanic they could yell at when the printer jammed. I used to wonder why they couldn't see what I was actually doing down there. I wasn't just resetting routers. I was rewriting the entire security architecture of the hotel network because William kept clicking on phishing links that exposed our guest data. I was building firewalls. I was learning the language of the future while they were obsessing over the thread count of the sheets. It took me years to realize it wasn't just neglect. It was a fundamental gap in their reality. Psychologists call it cognitive dissonance, but in my family, it was just blindness born of arrogance. To a hotelier like my father, wealth looks like a chandelier. Power looks like a corner office with a view. They literally lacked the intellectual framework to understand that the girl in the hoodie, typing lines of code in the dark, was building something worth more than their entire real estate portfolio. To them, technology was blue-collar work. It was service. It was beneath them. They looked at me and saw failure because I didn't fit their archaic definition of success. They equated silence with poverty. They didn't understand that in the modern world, the most powerful things are the ones you can't see. So, I let them believe it. I let them think I was struggling. I let William sneer at my little computer projects. I didn't tell them that while William was bankrupting the family legacy one bad deal at a time, I was writing the code that now secured 40% of the global banking transactions. I built Aegis AI in the dark, fed by their rejection, powered by the silence they forced me into. And now, standing in this courtroom, watching William smirk at his lawyer, I realized he still didn't see me. He saw the sister, who used the service elevator. He didn't know he was standing in the crosshairs of the very system he was trying to manipulate. William took the stand with the practiced ease of a man who had spent his entire life rehearsing for an audience. He adjusted the microphone, flashed a charming, apologetic smile at Judge Vance, and began to dismantle my life with a lie so audacious it was almost impressive. He claimed that Aegis AI wasn't mine. He claimed it was born from Sterling Resources. According to his testimony, the $4,500,000 wasn't just a number pulled from thin air. It was a seed loan structured through a shell company to protect the family's primary assets. He spoke of proprietary algorithms I had allegedly stolen from the hotel's guest management system, a claim so technically illiterate it would be laughable if he weren't under oath. I watched him, and for the first time in years, I didn't see the bully who used to lock me out of the house. I saw a drowning man. There is a specific kind of rot that infects the golden child. William was given everything: the best schools, the VP title at 24, the unconditional adoration of our parents. He was told he was a genius from the moment he could tie his shoes. But the weight of that pedestal is crushing. When you are handed the world, You live in constant terror of dropping it. And William had dropped it. I knew the rumors. The Sterling Hotel Group was leveraging debt to pay debt. The occupancy rates were plummeting. And William had a taste for high-stakes poker tables in Macau that his salary couldn't support. He wasn't suing me just because he was greedy. He was suing me because he was terrified. He looked at me, the sister he had mocked, the little tech nerd, and he saw a lifeline. My company was the only asset liquid enough to cover the massive hole he had blown in the family fortune. But beneath the desperation, there was something darker. Hate. He hated me not because I was a failure, but because I had succeeded, without the one thing he couldn't live without, their help. I was the living proof of his inadequacy. If the sister who was banished to the basement could build an empire from nothing, what did that say about the brother who was given a castle and let it crumble? He needed to believe I stole it. He needed to believe I was a fraud. Because if I wasn't a fraud, then he was. So he lied. He looked the judge in the eye and swore that he was the architect of my success. He tried to rewrite history to place himself back on top. To make me small again. To put me back in the service elevator where he felt safe. My lawyer, Marcus, leaned over to me, his pen hovering over his legal pad. "He's committing perjury with every breath," Marcus whispered, his voice devoid of emotion. "Do you want to stop him?" "No," I said, my eyes fixed on my brother's sweating forehead. "Let him finish. Let him put it all on the record. I want him to bury himself." I didn't scream. I didn't object. In the gallery, my mother was clutching her purse, leaning forward, waiting for the outburst. She wanted the tantrum. She needed the unstable, emotional daughter to make a scene so she could look at my father with that tragic, long-suffering expression and say, "See? We tried. But I gave them nothing but ice." Emotion in business is just bad data. It clouds the variables. It introduces error. And right now, I wasn't a sister or a daughter. I was a CEO executing a hostile takeover of the narrative. I looked at Marcus. He was sitting perfectly still, a shark waiting for a drop of blood in the water. I gave him a single, micro nod. That was the signal. The time for listening to fairy tales was over. It was time for the audit. Marcus stood up, buttoning his suit jacket with a precise, lethal snap. He didn't approach the witness stand aggressively. He walked over with the casual air of a man who already knew the answer to every question he was about to ask. "Mr. Sterling," Marcus began, his voice smooth. "You stated that you personally oversaw the funding and initial development of the proprietary algorithms used by Aegis AI. Is that correct?" "Absolutely," William said, leaning into the microphone, his confidence returning now that he was speaking to another man in a suit. "It was my vision. Natalie just handled the keyboard work." "The keyboard work," Marcus repeated, tasting the phrase. "Interesting. So, regarding the evidence you submitted, specifically Exhibit C, the email chain authorizing the transfer of the source code, you're familiar with the metadata attached to these files?" William blinked. The charm faltered for a fraction of a second. "The what?" "The metadata, Mr. Sterling. The digital fingerprint inherent in every electronic file. You see, these emails you provided, they contain specific routing headers. Can you explain to the court why the IP addresses listed in your 2019 emails belong to a server farm in Estonia that wasn't built until 2023? The room went deadly silent. My father shifted in his seat. William laughed, a nervous, jagged sound. "I'm a big-picture guy. I don't get bogged down in technicalities. The point is, I sent the emails. Details aren't technicalities in federal court, Mr. Sterling. They are the difference between evidence and perjury." Marcus picked up another sheet of paper. "Let's talk about the proprietary algorithms you claim to own. Can you tell the court what coding language the core Aegis kernel is written in?" William tugged at his collar. He looked at our parents, but they couldn't help him. They didn't even know what a kernel was. It's standard code, industry standard. Is it Python, C++? Rust? Marcus pressed, his voice sharpening. "You funded it. You oversaw the vision. Surely you know the language of your own creation." "It's technical," William snapped, his face flushing a deep, angry red. "I hired people for that. I don't need to know how the engine works to drive the car. But you aren't claiming to drive the car, Mr. Sterling, Marcus said, dropping the paper onto the defense table with a heavy thud. You are claiming you built it. And right now, you can't even find the keys. The trap wasn't just set, it had snapped shut, breaking the bone. William had walked into a room full of engineers and tried to bluff his way through a physics exam. He thought this was a hospitality dispute, where he could charm his way out of a mistake with a free room upgrade. He didn't realize he was under oath, and ignorance wasn't a defense, it was an admission. Marcus didn't wait for William to recover. He didn't give him a moment to come up with another lie about shell companies or offshore servers. He simply turned back to the defense table and picked up a single, thick document bound in heavy blue cardstock. Your Honor, Marcus said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming grave. Mr. Sterling has spent the last hour characterizing Aegis AI as a failing hobby project. A drain on resources. A liability that needs to be liquidated to pay off family debts. He walked to the bench and handed the document to Judge Vance. This is a tender offer we received 72 hours ago. It is a formal acquisition proposal from the Sovereign Global Bank. They aren't looking to liquidate Aegis AI, Your Honor. They are looking to buy it. Judge Vance opened the folder. Her eyes scanned the first page. Then they stopped. She blinked, once, slowly, as if she couldn't process the number she was seeing. The valuation? She asked, looking over her glasses at Marcus. $450 million, Marcus said. The silence that followed wasn't just quiet, it was a vacuum. It sucked the air out of the room. In the gallery, my mother gasped. It was a sharp, wet sound, like someone had punched her in the stomach. My father froze, his hand halfway to his mouth, staring at the back of Marcus's head. $450 million. They knew numbers. They didn't know code, or kernels, or server farms. But they knew money. They knew that the Sterling Hotel Group, even in its prime, had never been valued at a quarter of that. They knew that William had just dragged them into court to sue for pennies while trying to burn down a diamond mine. Aegis AI isn't a computer repair shop, Mr. Sterling. Marcus continued, turning back to my brother. William was pale now, a sickly, waxen color. It is the primary security infrastructure for 3 of the 5 largest banking networks in North America. When you swipe a credit card, Aegis verifies it. When you transfer funds, Aegis encrypts it. Natalie didn't build a toy. She built the vault. Marcus took a step closer to the witness stand. And that brings us to the problem of jurisdiction and severity. You see, claiming a debt of $4 million in a civil court is one thing, but attempting to seize control of a federally regulated financial security asset through fraudulent documentation? Marcus let the question hang there, heavy and terrifying. That isn't a family dispute, William. That is attempted grand larceny on a scale that triggers federal oversight. You aren't just suing your sister anymore, you are trying to steal $500 million from the banking industry. William looked at our parents. For the first time in his life, he wasn't looking for applause. He was looking for a lifeboat. But they weren't looking at him. They were looking at me. They were looking at the daughter they had hidden in the basement, the one they had told to use the service elevator. And in their eyes, I saw the most satisfying thing I had ever seen. It wasn't love. It wasn't pride. It was the terrifying, gut-wrenching realization that they had bet on the wrong horse, and now, the race was over. Judge Vance picked up her tablet, tapping the screen with a slow, deliberate rhythm that echoed in the silent courtroom. She didn't look at William. She didn't look at Marcus. She looked at the screen, her expression shifting from judicial neutrality to a cold, predatory focus. Mr. Sterling, she said, her voice cutting through the tension like a laser. Are you aware of the evidentiary verification protocols used by the San Francisco Business Court? William wiped sweat from his brow. I assume they are standard, Your Honor. Standard? She let out a short, dry laugh. Hardly. We implemented a new system 6 months ago. A blockchain-verified fraud detection suite designed specifically to catch fabricated digital evidence in high-stakes corporate litigation. It scans metadata, cross-references server logs, and uses predictive analytics to flag inconsistencies. She turned the tablet around, displaying a dashboard glowing with red warning indicators. This is the report on your submission, Mr. Sterling. The email chains. The wire transfer receipts. The loan agreements. Every single document you submitted has been flagged with a 99.9% probability of forgery. William's mouth opened, but no sound came out. And do you know who built this system? Judge Vance asked, her eyes finally locking onto his. Do you know who designed the proprietary AI that just caught you red-handed? She tapped the logo in the corner of the screen. A stylized shield. The logo of Aegis AI. The court licenses this software from Aegis AI, she said. Your sister didn't just build a company, Mr. Sterling. She built the very instrument of justice that is currently dismantling your case. The irony was so sharp it almost drew blood. William had tried to use the legal system as a weapon, unaware that I had already fortified the battlefield. He was trying to sue the architect using her own blueprints. According to this report, generated by your sister's code, the 2019 loan agreement was created on a laptop registered to the Sterling Hotel Group 48 hours ago, Judge Vance read, her voice dripping with disdain. The wire transfer receipts are composite images, layers of Photoshop over a template downloaded from a public forum. William exploded, the facade cracked, and the ugly, desperate truth spilled out. She rigged it, he screamed, pointing a shaking finger at me. It's her software! She programmed it to flag my evidence. She's manipulating the court. Mr. Sterling, sit down, Judge Vance ordered, her gavel slamming down. No, you don't understand. I need that money, William shouted, his voice cracking, the polished air dissolving into a panicked child. The creditors are calling. They're going to take the hotel. They're going to take everything. I can't lose it. I'm the one who stayed. I'm the one who did everything right. The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of his confession. He had just admitted it. It wasn't about justice. It wasn't about a loan. It was about his own failure. He had gambled away the family legacy, and he was trying to harvest my success to pay his debts. My parents stared at him. For the first time, they weren't looking at the golden child. They were looking at a stranger. A desperate, sweating, lying stranger who had just admitted to bankrupting their empire. The illusion was shattered. The concierge bell had stopped ringing. The bailiff approached, handcuffs rattling. It was a jarring sound in a room designed for quiet deliberation. William didn't fight. He didn't even argue. He just slumped, all the bluster and charm draining out of him, leaving behind a terrified boy who had finally been caught with his hand in the cookie jar. As they led him away, my parents finally moved. They rushed toward the aisle, not to comfort him, but to intercept me. Natalie, my mother said, her voice trembling, reaching out to grab my arm. I sidestepped her touch. Natalie, you have to help us. We didn't know. He told us the money was for an expansion. We had no idea about the gambling, or the debts. We can fix this, my father added, his face gray. With the acquisition, with your resources, we can pay off the creditors. We can save the hotel. It's your legacy too. I stopped. I looked at them, really looked at them, for the first time in years. They looked small, they looked old, and they looked desperate. My legacy? I asked, my voice calm. My legacy is Aegis. My legacy is the code I wrote while you were telling me to hide in the basement. The hotel isn't my legacy. It's William's. And now? It's his problem. You can't mean that, my mother pleaded. We're family. You're our daughter. I am, I said. I'm the daughter you were ashamed of. The daughter you ignored. The daughter you underestimated. I turned to Marcus. Are we done here? We're done, Marcus said, snapping his briefcase shut. Natalie, wait! My father called out as I started to walk away. You can't just leave us like this. We need you. I paused at the courtroom doors and looked back one last time. You valued the wrapping paper, I said, my voice echoing slightly in the high-ceilinged room. I built the gift. And now? I'm taking it with me. I pushed open the doors and walked out into the San Francisco sunlight. The air smelled of salt and eucalyptus, crisp and clean. I didn't look back at the courthouse. I didn't check my phone. I hailed a cab, not to the Sterling Hotel, but to my apartment in the Mission. I had a company to run. I had a team to meet. I had a life to live, a life built on substance, on truth, and on the quiet, undeniable power of knowing exactly who you are.